One evening, as she stood by the well fetching water, Emeka appeared, his intense gaze locking onto hers. "You're making this harder for me, Chioma," he murmured, stepping closer. She swallowed, feeling the heat rise in her chest. "What do you mean?" He reached out, his fingers grazing hers as he took the bucket from her hand. "You know what I mean," he said softly. "Tell me to stop, and I will." Chioma opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Did she want him to stop? A storm of emotions churned inside her, guilt battling with desire. Then, the unexpected happened, a voice behind them. "Chioma, what are you doing?" Chioma sat in the dimly lit living room, her mind tangled in a web of suspicions. Obinna had become distant, his phone always face down, his laughter reserved for hushed conversations. She had confronted him once, but his denial had been swift and cutting. "You're overthinking things, Chioma. You know I'd never do that to you." Yet his words lacked warmth, and the shadows in her heart deepened. Mom and Kechi, their nosy neighbor, had been the first to plant the seed of doubt. One evening, as Chioma returned from the market, the elderly woman had stopped her with a knowing smirk. "My dear, men are like the moon. They shine on many, not just one. Keep your eyes open before you become the last to know." The words gnawed at Chioma. She started noticing the little things. Obinna's late nights, the scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging to his shirts, the way he avoided her gaze when she asked about his day. She tried to push the thoughts away, but the seed had taken root, growing into something dark and dangerous. One night, unable to sleep, Chioma sat by the window, watching the empty street below. The ache in her chest had turned into something else, something fierce. If Obinna had betrayed her, what stopped her from doing the same? As the thought settled, a strange sense of power washed over her. If trust had already crumbled, did loyalty even matter anymore? Chioma's mind wrestled with a new kind of restlessness. The idea of revenge was intoxicating, but she had never seen herself as that kind of woman. She had always been the faithful wife, the loyal partner. But loyalty was a two-way street, wasn't it? If Obinna had veered off course, why should she remain bound to a vow that had already been broken? Mom and Kechi's words replayed in her head, fanning the flames of doubt and curiosity. "Men don't hesitate, my dear. They take what they want. Why should we women sit and suffer?" That evening, Chioma found herself lingering by the front gate longer than usual. She adjusted the wrapper around her waist, glancing over at the neighboring house where Emeka lived. Emeka had always been friendly, always ready with a joke or a helping hand. He was younger than Obinna, muscular, and had a confidence that made him stand out. She had caught him looking at her before, but she had dismissed it as harmless admiration. Tonight, however, she saw it differently. As if sensing her thoughts, Emeka strolled outside, his shirt carelessly unbuttoned, revealing his toned chest. "Chioma, you're out late," he said, his voice smooth and deep. She hesitated, but something about the way he looked at her made her stay. "Couldn't sleep," she murmured, her fingers tracing the edge of her wrapper. Emeka leaned against the wall, watching her closely. Sometimes the best way to clear the mind is to talk, or do something to take your mind off things. Chioma swallowed hard, feeling the weight of temptation pressing down on her. This was dangerous territory. But wasn't Obinna playing the same game? The night air was thick with unspoken words, and as Emeka took a slow step closer, Chioma felt her resolve waver. What harm was there in just talking? After all, wasn't she owed a little attention? The following days blurred into a strange dance of stolen glances and unspoken desires. Chioma found herself lingering around the compound more often, her eyes unconsciously searching for Emeka. When their paths crossed, a silent tension crackled between them, a dangerous game neither was willing to admit was unfolding. Obinna remained oblivious, still drowning in his own world of secrecy, unaware that his wife had begun carving her own path of deceit. Chioma's heart raced with a mix of guilt and excitement. She told herself it was harmless, just harmless conversations. But deep down, she knew better. One evening, as she walked back from the market, she felt a presence beside her. Emeka. His cologne was strong, intoxicating, and she realized she had been anticipating this encounter. "You seem distracted lately," Emeka murmured, his voice low. "What's on your mind?" Chioma hesitated, the weight of her emotions pressing against her chest. "Nothing important," she lied, but Emeka's knowing smile told her he didn't believe her. They walked in silence for a while until he stopped abruptly, gently grabbing her wrist. "Chioma, if something is wrong, you can talk to me," he said, his eyes searching hers. Her breath hitched. His touch sent a shiver down her spine, awakening something she had buried for too long. Loneliness, frustration, the desperate need to feel wanted. As if on cue, Mom Nkechi's voice echoed in her head. Why should we women sit and suffer? Chioma glanced around, ensuring no one was watching, before stepping slightly closer to Emeka. Maybe I just need someone to listen, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Emeka's gaze darkened, and for the first time, she saw the hunger in his eyes. She had crossed an invisible line, and there was no turning back. Chioma knew she was playing with fire, but the thrill of it was intoxicating. Emeka had become her escape, a forbidden indulgence that made her feel alive again. Their conversations had grown longer, their encounters riskier. She told herself it was just a game, a way to feel desired again. But deep inside, she knew the truth. This was more than just revenge. One evening, as she stood by the well fetching water, Emeka appeared, his intense gaze locking onto hers. You're making this harder for me, Chioma, he murmured, stepping closer. She swallowed, feeling the heat rise in her chest. What do you mean? He reached out, his fingers grazing hers as he took the bucket from her hand. You know what I mean, he said softly. Tell me to stop, and I will. Chioma opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Did she want him to stop? A storm of emotions churned inside her, guilt battling with desire. Then, the unexpected happened, a voice behind them. Chioma, what are you doing? She spun around to see Mama Nkechi watching them with narrowed eyes. A knowing smirk played on the old woman's lips. Careful, my dear. You're treading on dangerous ground. Chioma's heart pounded as she realized she wasn't just deceiving Obinna anymore. She was deceiving herself. The walls were closing in on Chioma. Every stolen moment with Emeka left a mark on her conscience, but the desire only grew stronger. Mama Nkechi was watching, and she wasn't one to keep secrets for free. One evening, as Chioma prepared dinner, she heard a knock. When she opened the door, Mama Nkechi stood there, her sly smile unsettling. We need to talk, my dear. It's about your husband, and what he doesn't know. Chioma's blood ran cold. The game she had been playing was about to take a dangerous turn. Chioma sat frozen as Mama Nkechi lowered herself onto a stool, her sharp eyes gleaming with intrigue. The older woman leaned in, voice hushed but laced with satisfaction. Your husband, he's been up to something, she whispered. But the real question is, what will you do about it? Chioma's heart pounded. Had Mama Nkechi discovered Obinna's secrets, or was she simply testing her? A cold sweat broke out on her forehead as she tried to mask her own guilt. What do you mean? She asked carefully. Mama Nkechi smiled knowingly. I see things, Chioma. I know things. You may think you're alone in your actions, but the past has a funny way of repeating itself. Chioma's fingers trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. What are you trying to say? The old woman sighed and settled in as if preparing for a long tale. You remind me so much of your mother, she said. Beautiful, confident, and cursed with the same weakness. Chioma flinched. My mother. Mama Nkechi nodded slowly. You never knew, did you? That your father left not because he wanted to, but because he found out the truth. Your mother, just like you, sought comfort elsewhere when trust crumbled. And in the end, it destroyed everything. The words slammed into Chioma like a wave, knocking the air from her lungs. Memories of her childhood, her father's sudden departure, her mother's silent tears, came rushing back with terrifying clarity. She had spent years resenting her father for abandoning them, never knowing the full story. History has a way of repeating itself, my dear, Mama Nkechi continued. What you and Obinna are doing now, it didn't start with you. It's been in your bloodline for generations. Chioma felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Was she simply following a path that had already been written for her? Was betrayal something that ran through her veins, impossible to escape? A sudden knock at the door jolted her from her thoughts. When she turned, Obinna stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. He had heard everything. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Mama Nkechi smirked and rose to her feet. Well, she said, brushing imaginary dust from her wrapper, I'll leave you two to figure out if you want to break the cycle or continue it. As the door clicked shut behind her, Chioma and Obinna stared at each other. Two people bound by love, betrayal, and a history that refused to let go. The question remained, would they fight to end the curse, or had they already lost? Thank you for watching. Kindly share your thoughts in the comment section. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos.